I'm back with another resin project. So, why the hell do I have a package of soap, you might ask? Well, the internet has told me that if you take a small piece of Ivory soap, and apparently it has to be Ivory brand soap, and put it in the microwave, it puffs up into a cloud-like structure that you can break up into tiny clouds. And apparently, adding these tiny clouds to UV resin doesn't affect how the resin cures. And it's already pretty persnickety, so I'm really leery of adding weird things without knowing if it will cure properly or not. And as you saw from the title of this video, today I am making sky-themed dice, which means I need some clouds. So yeah, let's go check it out. Okay, into the microwave. A very little bit. Microwave 40-ish seconds and whoa. Oh my god, look at that. That's cool. It's like fluffy. But actually this stuff ends up being very brittle. I would suggest that if you do this, use a way smaller chunk than I did, because I didn't end up using like even half of this amount, and I made a full set of dice. Also, word to the wise about the amount of resin it took to make these. I bought a huge 250 milliliter bottle of resin, and I'm gonna guess I used about half of it doing this project. So yeah, expect to use a good 100, maybe 125 mils of resin to make these 7 dice. The resin is expensive, but you did get 7 dice out of it, and you could probably do another batch of 7, so not too terribly expensive. I think I paid $20 for my bottle of UV resin, so it's about $10 for 7. Anyway, just something to think about. It probably doesn't look like it took that much resin, that's why I wanted to mention. So this is my new lamp. However, after this project, I still needed to put the dice in the sun for a couple of days, rotating them periodically. Because the resin cured, but it was like a soft cure. It didn't make that hard click noise like they should. No matter how long I left them in the lamp for, trust me, I tried it for a long time. So yeah, I guess I have to keep experimenting with different lamps until I find one that works how I want it to. Anyway, using my Holtz Distress inks, I mixed up my colors. Here I'm using Spun Sugar for pink, Scattered Straw for yellow, Shabby Shutters for green, Broken China for blue, and Dusty Concord for purple. And I used a very tiny amount of each ink so that it would make some very light pastel colors. Now I'm only going to show how I did the D20, since the process is the same for all the dice, and it's a pretty long process, but you'll get it after the first die, I'm sure. First, I coated the inside of the mold with a layer of clear resin and cured it in the lamp. It's sort of hard to see since the opening of the mold is so small, but I used this little pointed tool. You could definitely use an awl or a toothpick or a skewer or something. And I added lines for the rainbow, a line of pink, yellow, green, blue, and purple, all in a row, which I cured immediately when I was done so that it didn't settle or spread out too much. I did a second layer of the rainbow just to make it darker and a bit more noticeable, and after that was cured, I added another thin layer of clear and started adding in little clumps of soap for clouds. I found that touching the toothpick or whatever you're using to pick up the cloud pieces to a tiny bit of the resin just to make it sticky made picking them up and placing them way easier. They do break up really easily. Like I said, it's quite brittle, and it smells of soap, so it's not like it has an offensive smell. It was actually pretty cool. After I cured that layer, the next layer is the very light blue Broken China tinted resin instead of clear, again with more clouds. Each layer from now on, I'm adding more and more clouds so they are more concentrated in the blue layers of resin. So, next is another layer of resin that is tinted with slightly more blue ink and even more clouds. The gradient ends up being pretty subtle in the end. I make each blue layer a little bit darker as I add them. Once the mold is totally full, the last layer is just clear resin, and I make sure to overfill it slightly before putting on the top so there aren't any air pockets. After that cure came the arduous process of liberating the D20 from its mold. I actually didn't think I was going to get it out. It took me almost 10 minutes of struggling and eventually deciding that I was resigned to ripping the mold so I could get the die out. Eventually it did come out without damaging the mold too much. There is one little tiny tear in the top corner, but otherwise it's fine. And you don't have to buy all the dice molds from Sophie and Toffee like I did in my haul in a set. So if you did damage one of the molds, you could buy a little individual separate mold to replace it. Anyway, after I got it out, first I thought I would use some tarnished brass distress ink mixed with resin and fill in the numbers so that they would be metallic. But that proved to be super tedious, and I am not a patient person, so I ended up instead using gold acrylic paint and then putting a layer of clear resin over it to fill in the number indents and protect the paint from chipping off of the die. And that's all. This is the full set of dice that you can make from the molds at Sophie and Toffee. There is a D20, a D4, a D6, a D8, a D10, a D12, and a percentage die. I really like this set. Personally, I think the D20 is the best one. I'm glad it happens to be the one I chose to film. They're all nice, but the smaller dice ended up with more clear space at the top than I meant because I used too much resin for the initial coat of the mold. Let me know what you think. I was really excited to try out these molds, and they all end molded just fine except for that D20. That was definitely a struggle. I might have to look into some mold release or something in the future if I do this again, which I'm sure I will. I don't know if they make mold release for UV resin, but I'll have to look into it, because it was just unnecessarily difficult to get that die out of that mold. Anyway, please like this video if you like how these dice turned out too. Subscribe and ring the bell for more creative art, and until next time, I'll see y'all later. Bye!